And the Mediterranean continues to burn due to apocalyptic-like wildfires, killing more than 40 people. These and more for tonight's edition of Newsline World. The deadly wildfires sweeping across Europe have now claimed over 40 lives. Justine Nazario reports.
Over 40 people were killed due to extreme heat waves and intense blazes as wildfires spread across the Mediterranean. Homes, livelihoods, and nature reserves in Greece and 8 other Mediterranean countries have been affected with widespread destruction caused by the fires. Despite the tireless efforts of firefighters in Portugal, Turkey, Italy, France, Croatia, Spain, and Greece, the fires have been allowed to spread rapidly due to the dangerous situation created by the scorching temperatures and strong winds. In some areas of Greece, temperatures have exceeded 44 degrees Celsius, further challenging the firefighting efforts. 2 lives were claimed by additional wildfires near 2 Greek cities, leading to the issuance of new evacuation orders. Meanwhile, the fires continue to burn on the islands of Rhodes, Corfu, and Evia. Meanwhile, Algeria is the most hit country. The death toll from wildfires has risen to 34, including 10 soldiers. The Algerian ministry said some 8,000 people were working to battle the blazes across multiple provinces, supported by over 500 fire trucks and several firefighting helicopters. As the Mediterranean continues to burn, the United Kingdom's Met Office warned that its country could be next. The UK's Met Office has issued warnings that temperatures higher than 40 degrees Celsius, along with summer droughts, grass fires, and heavy downpours, will become more frequent and severe. In response to the ongoing crisis, support is being sought by European unions from neighboring countries to combat the devastating wildfires and save lives. The priority remains on protecting communities and minimizing the impact of these destructive fires that have left a trail of devastation and loss across the continent. Reporting, this is Justine Nazario, SMNI News.
Australian authorities came up with a new strategy to prevent aggressive fire ants from invading the New South Wales border. Sheena Silim for the rest of the details.
Queensland officials warned of devastating consequences once the fire ants can breach the state border. Officials got alarmed after the invasive species were detected on the Gold Coast last week, just 5.5 kilometers from the state border. The nest, found in private land, has been successfully destroyed. Authorities said it has been the closest detection ever made since they were first detected at the port of Brisbane in 2001. A biosecurity control order is now in place to prevent the movement of materials that could bring the ants inside the border. Originating from the lowland areas of South America, the aggressive fire ants are considered one of the world's worst invasive species, as they can cause significant damage to the environment, attack humans, and pose a threat to the economy. Their venom can also cause a severe reaction in hypersensitive individuals and are responsible for killing people in the southern half of the United States. Meanwhile, Australia's climate and lack of natural predators make it the perfect home for invasive species. Experts called for more government funding to eradicate the super pests and warned that the entry of fire ants in New South Wales would be worse than rabbits, cane toads, foxes, and feral cats combined. Reporting from New South Wales, this is Sheena Silim, SMNI News, Australia.
Soldiers of the landlocked West African country of Niger announced a coup on national television after reports emerged that they detained their elected president, Mohamed Bazoum. Virgil Parba reports.
Niger, a former French colony, witnessed a military coup on Wednesday as soldiers in military uniforms declared they have taken power, and President Mohamed Bazoum was reportedly seized by members of Presidential Guard, leading to international condemnation and uncertainty in the region. In a video message, Colonel Major Amadou Abdramani, surrounded by soldiers, announced the end of the current regime, citing a deteriorating security situation and poor governance, and consequently national institutions were suspended and the country's land borders were temporarily closed.
Nous, forces de défense et de sécurité, réunis au sein du Conseil national pour la sauvegarde de la patrie, CNSP, avons décidé de mettre fin au régime que vous connaissez. Cela fait suite à la dégradation continue de la situation sécuritaire, la mauvaise gouvernance économique et sociale. Réaffirmons notre attachement au respect de tous les engagements souscrits par le Niger. Nous rassurons la communauté nationale et internationale par rapport au respect de l'intégrité physique et morale des autorités déchues conformément aux principes des droits humains.
The colonel also asked foreign powers not to interfere on the matter. Meanwhile, supporters of the Niger president took the streets to protest against the military takeover. The international community swiftly condemned the coup, with United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres strongly denouncing the move and said that the international body stands by the government and the people of Niger.
The Secretary General is following closely the situation in Niger. He condemns in the strongest terms any efforts to seize power by force and to undermine democratic governance, peace and stability in Niger. The Secretary General calls on all actors involved to exercise restraint and ensure the protection of constitutional order. The United Nations stands by the government and people of Niger.
While the Economic Community of West African States, or ECOWAS, condemned the attempted coup and demanded the release of the democratically elected president. The coup in Niger adds to regional instability, given the neighboring countries Mali and Burkina Faso have also experienced recent coups amidst jihadist uprisings. International leaders are closely monitoring developments and are calling for a return to constitutional rule in Niger. It can be noted that the now deposed President Bazoum is perceived as pro-West, or a key Western ally in the war against Islamist militancy in West Africa. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called for the immediate release of President Mohamed Bazoum. As of now, the situation remains unclear and President Bazoum's whereabouts are unknown, with the presidential complex sealed off by the Presidential Guard. This has been Verhil Parba, SMNI News.
The United Arab Emirates and China surpassed the United States in terms of the number of exhibitors participating in the ongoing weapons fair in Turkey. Trisha Molina has the news.
The 16th International Defense Industry Fair, or IDEF 2023, currently taking place in Istanbul, has been flocked by different defense companies worldwide, including China and the UAE. The trade fair started on the 25th of July and will end on the 28th. The biennial event, which began in 1993, gives a significant opportunity for defense companies to exhibit high-tech products and develop cooperation between the national and international exhibitors. More than 70 defense companies from China and 15 from the UAE participated in the event, while only 6 exhibitors from the United States attended. For this year, approximately 1,300 domestic and foreign companies linked to defense, security, marine, aviation, and aerospace industries are expected to participate in the fair. The 15th edition, held in 2021, was attended by more than 1,000 companies from 53 countries. The trade fair, held every 2 years in Istanbul, has been ranked as the 4th largest defense trade show worldwide. Reporting, this has been Trisha Molina, SMNI News.
Meanwhile, Russia's defense minister is currently in North Korea at the invitation of its leader, Kim Jong-un. Sherry Hayes reports.
According to North Korea's state broadcaster, Kim Jong-un showed off his country's latest missiles to Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu. The weapons shown off by Kim included the Hwasong Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, or ICBM, which is believed to be North Korea's first ICBM to use solid propellant. North Korea invited the Russian delegation, led by Shoigu, as well as Chinese officials. KCNA news agency said Kim and Shoigu had a friendly talk and discussed matters of mutual concern in the fields of national defense and on the international security environment. Shoigu also presented Kim with a so-called warm letter from Russian President Vladimir Putin during their meeting in Pyongyang. Shoigu also held talks with his North Korean counterpart, General Kang Sung-nam, and said that the cooperation between the two countries has been strengthening in the post-war period. Visits by the warships, officials visit by high-ranking representatives of defense departments, exchanges of delegations at the working level, and personal training have contributed to what Shoigu calls as preservation of peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. Russian Defense Minister General of the Army, Sergei Shoigu, and members of the Russian military delegation laid flowers at the Liberation Monument in Pyongyang. The delegation's visit to North Korea's Victory Day, as the 1953 and the hostilities is called in North, is expected to finish on Thursday with an extensive military parade. The Koreas are technically still at war because no peace agreement was reached when the conflict ended. The Russian officials' rare visit to North Korea coincided with a trip by a Chinese delegation led by senior diplomat Lee Hongzong, who also traveled to North Korea for high-level contacts. Seoul, Isabugo, Sherry Hayes, Imnida, SMNI News, South Korea.
Red Cross is planning to use artificial intelligence to detect landmines and dot munitions in war-torn areas. God's Inoue has the details.
The International Committee of the Red Cross, or ICRC, is seeking to use AI developed by Japan to help war-torn areas such as Ukraine detect landmines and dead munitions to help people return to their home as early as possible. The Red Cross, together with Japanese electronic company NEC Corporation and Japanese expert, has already developed a system involving drones and AI-aided equipment that improves its own image analysis capability by learning about its surroundings. The Red Cross wants to use the said system to help Ukraine track landmines and dead munitions. According to Marjana Spoljaric, ICRC president, the system will help anti-personal weapons contamination hit countries like Ukraine. Eric Tollefson, head of the committee's weapon contamination unit, added that the flying machines or drones can do the work of a dog in 6 months for just a day, and a deminer that identifies mines in 1 day in an area of 50 square meters. The drone will be able to do it only in 4 flights in an area of over 100,000 square meters. A physics professor at Waseda University, Hideyuki Sawada, said that the using AI technology will help detect landmines more effectively and quickly, reducing mine-related deaths and injuries. According to Sawada, if AI-aided equipment drone learns to detect landmines in urban settings or jungles, their landmine detection capabilities will improve further. Ijo Nihon kara Godsi no Hyoko katashimashita, SMNI News, Japan.
The Prime Minister of Cambodia, who is by far one of the world's longest-serving leaders, announced his decision to step down and appoint his oldest son to be his successor. Anissa de Guzman has a story.
After 38 years in power, Cambodian Prime Minister confirmed on state television his plan to resign and hand the position to his son in early August. The confirmation officially ended rumors his 45-year-old son, Hun Manet, will replace him as Prime Minister. He made the announcement after his ruling Cambodian People's Party, CCP, achieved a landslide victory in the general elections held this past weekend without any opponent, a move criticized by Western countries and rights organizations. His oldest son, who was the commander of the Royal Cambodian Army, won his first seat in parliament just days ago, a position that will make him eligible as Prime Minister. Hun Manet boasts of Western education under his belt, having graduated from the U.S. Military Academy, West Point, with a master's degree from New York University and a doctorate from Bristol University in Britain. Despite his Western education, observers don't expect any immediate shifts in policy after his father, Hun Sen, paved the way to build closer ties between Cambodia and China in recent years. Hun Sen said he is willing to return to his duties as Prime Minister if his son does not perform well. Disha Anissa de Guzman, Rangan Chakuntep Mahanakon, SMNI News, Pratethay, Sawadika.
Police officers in Thailand vowed to greet former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra with arrest warrants on his expected return to the country next month after living in self-imposed exile for 15 years. Chatmongkol Pisamay Goson reports.
The family of former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra, who has been removed from power due to a military coup in 26, admitted they are both happy and worried about the outcome of his scheduled return to Thailand on August 10.
The populist billionaire is set to arrive at Don Mueang Airport on August 10, which her daughter Paetongtarn Shinawatra announced during his father's 74th birthday this week. Thaksin Shinawatra, who remains popular among rural voters, was sentenced to 12 years in jail on 4 different charges, including for corruption and tax evasion. The former prime minister has lived overseas since fleeing the country in 2008 to avoid corruption charges, shifting residencies between Hong Kong, Singapore, Dubai, and London. His daughter, Paetongtarn Shinawatra, is one of the Pheu Thai Party's 3 prime ministerial candidates.
Thailand's Corrections Department chief promised to treat the fugitive former prime minister as an elderly prisoner and to grant him whatever medical treatment he may need if he is in prison. รายงานจากราชบุรี นายชัดมงคลวิสมัยโกศล SMS News ประเทศไทย สวัสดีครับ
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky asked his parliament to extend the martial law that will effectively cancel Ukraine's election scheduled for October. Andrea Santos has the details.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on July 26th submitted a proposal to the parliament to extend his country's martial law as well as general mobilization for another 90 days. The Ukrainian president first declared martial law on February 24, 2022, and has been extending it since then. Under martial law, all Ukrainian men ages 18 to 60, with some exceptions, are not allowed to leave Ukraine as they may be drafted to the military. It can be remembered that the Ukrainian parliament previously extended martial law and mobilization from May until August 18 of this year. Under Ukrainian law, parliamentary elections must be held no later than October 29th. It also requires a 60-day campaign period beginning August 28. Approval of Zelensky's request would mean that the martial law will be extended through November 15, and the Ukrainian constitution prohibits any elections during it. Zelensky also mentioned this in May, saying, quote, "If we have a martial law, we cannot have elections. The Constitution prohibits any elections during martial law." End of quote. In June, Zelensky in a BBC interview said that elections happen in a time of peace, when there is no fighting. While many allies support Zelensky, some of them have been critical of the possible cancellation of polls. Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe Chief Tinny Cox, in an interview, said that Ukraine should prepare for a vote as soon as possible because democracy cannot properly function without the elections. Meanwhile, Zelensky said that Ukrainian forces have received reinforcements for its air defense capabilities, although he did not specifically mention where it will be deployed. The Ukrainian president said it will be directed to where they are most needed. Zelensky did not also disclose the type of air defense support given to Ukraine. It can be remembered that on July 23rd, the Ukrainian president said that Western allies are preparing for new military aid packages, including air defense equipment, and the aid was to be discussed at a meeting between NATO and Ukraine on July 26th. Reporting, this is Andrea Santos, SMNI News.
Russia's decision to withdraw from the UN-backed Black Sea grain deal last week has sent shockwaves among global commodity markets, including Egypt, a country dependent on wheat as a major strategic commodity. Yasser Hakim tells us more.
Suspending the Black Sea grain deal has been bad news for the largest wheat importer in the world. Egypt consumes more than 21 million tons of wheat a year. More than half of this amount is imported. 80% of Egypt's wheat supplies come from the warring Russia and Ukraine. Wheat is a crucial ingredient in making bread, which serves as the main food staple for Egyptians. However, the local market has not been affected by the latest developments yet.
Throughout the crisis, we haven't felt any shortage so far.
Egypt's silo capacity was raised to 3.5 million tons in 2022 from 1.25 million in 2021. The Minister of Supply has continuously reassured the public that there is no need for panic despite the recent global grain markets developments.
Up till now, the effect is not highly pronounced. We have more than 5 months reserves, which are very, very safe and very good.
The increased silo capacity has come at a cost, as the price of wheat surged by 10% following the collapse of the Black Sea grain deal. Consequently, cash-strapped Cairo had to negotiate a $400 million loan with the United Arab Emirates to finance future wheat shipments.
But the Egyptian government has been adopting a long-term strategy to help it become more resilient against external shocks.
To bolster its food security, the North African country is diversifying its grain sources by importing from countries such as France, Bulgaria, the United States, and Argentina. Additionally, it is ramping up wheat production domestically.
Egypt announced an ambitious plan to cultivate wheat in new plots of land. The total size of the new cultivated land will reach 3.2 million fadans. These are very commendable efforts and open a door to end this issue and achieve self-sufficiency.
Officials have been supporting farmers like Mohyi Mustafa by providing them with updated technology to enhance their production levels.
State experts are giving us technical assistance, weekly supervision, laser equipment and seeds for free to use here. This type of seed double the yield on the same size of land and at less cost.
Through this scheme, the government aims to achieve local production exceeding 55% of total consumption by 2025 and reaching 70% by the end of the decade. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo, Egypt.
The first meeting of the Russia-Africa Summit has kicked off in St. Petersburg. During the event, Russian President Vladimir Putin promised that he will ramp up energy exports to Africa and promised to provide free grain. Carlo de la Peña reports.
Russia will be ready to ship free grain to some of the poorest nations in Africa within the next 3 months. This is the promise announced by President Vladimir Putin during a speech at the recently held Russia-Africa Summit in St. Petersburg. According to Putin, Burkina Faso, Zimbabwe, Mali, Somalia, the Central African Republic, and Eritrea will each receive 25,000 to 50,000 tons of grain, and Russia will cover the delivery costs of the shipments. It can be remembered that Russia broke off from the Black Sea grain deal after refusing to extend it for another 60 days. Russia had long insisted that the agreement had failed to achieve its aims. Putin also said that the United Nations is unable to persuade Western countries to lift economic sanctions on Russian food and fertilizer exports, which was also part of the deal. According to the Russian president, and quote, "They created obstacles even to our plans to donate fertilizers to the poorest nations that needed them. Out of 262,000 tons of the fertilizers blocked in European ports, we've managed to ship only 2 lots, merely 20,000 tons to Malawi and 34,000 tons to Kenya. The rest remains in the hands of the Europeans." End of quote. Putin also slammed Western leaders, calling them hypocritical for accusing Russia of causing instability in the global food market. As for energy exports, Putin touted that Russian companies have been boosting energy deliveries to Africa. In the past 2 years, Russia has ramped up its exports of oil, petroleum products, and liquefied natural gas to African countries by a factor of 2.6, as said by Putin. Supplies of Russian oil products also soared threefold in the first 5 months of 2023 to 8 million tons. Moscow is also developing logistics and financial infrastructure for energy deliveries. The 2-day summit takes place on July 27th to 28th and is currently being attended by guest delegations from more than 40 nations. The Kremlin said foreign dignitaries have gathered in St. Petersburg in defiance of Western pressure, with spokesman Dmitry Peskov saying that Western powers, including the United States and France, have tried to bully other countries into skipping the said event. The White House has previously denied meddling in the foreign policy of African nations. Reporting, this has been Carlo de la Peña, SMNI News.
Prior to the Russia-Africa summit, Putin met with the head of a new development bank to talk about the BRICS economic bloc. Putin also accused the U.S. of weaponizing the dollar. Jane Cognita has details.
Russian President Vladimir Putin claimed that the U.S. dollar is being used as a weapon of political struggle during his meeting with BRICS new development bank president Dilma Rousseff in St. Petersburg on Wednesday. According to Putin, while setting up alternative financial institutions is difficult, it is still considered as a necessary endeavor at a time when the U.S. has weaponized the dollar. The Russian president also lauded Rousseff, who is also the former president of Brazil. Rousseff took over the position as the president of the NDB on March 23, 2023.
Между нашими странами, членами БРИКС, развиваются отношения в национальных валютах, расчеты увеличиваются. И в этой связи, мне кажется, банк тоже может сыграть определенную заметную роль в развитии направления нашей совместной деятельности. Не сомневаюсь, что, используя свой богатый опыт государственной работы, знаний в этой сфере, вы сделаете все для того, чтобы развивать этот институт. На мой взгляд, очень важный сегодняшний день.
Meanwhile, Rousseff, for her part, agreed that such an approach should be implemented by developing countries in general and underscored Russia's importance in BRICS.
A Federação Russa é uma grande parceira do BRICS, do NDB, e tem uma participação de fato que cumpre todos os seus compromissos. De outro lado, é muito importante para o banco também ter condições de ter uma captação em várias moedas diferentes, não só no dólar.
BRICS is an economic bloc comprising of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, while the new development bank was established in 2014 to finance infrastructure and sustainable development projects in BRICS and developing countries. Reporting, this has been Jane Cognita, SMNI News.
Some experts express that U.S. interest rate hike brings a negative impact on the real economy. Loren Santos reports.
Some experts believe that the Federal Reserve has raised interest rates many times since last March to combat soaring inflation in the United States, causing severe negative effects on the real economy. The Federal Reserve of the United States hiked its benchmark interest rates by 25 basis points on Wednesday to a range of 5.25 to 5.5%, the highest level in more than 2 decades, as it stepped up its fight against inflation. It is the Fed's 11th rate hike since the start of its aggressive rate hiking cycle in March 2022, raising the federal funds rate to its highest level since early 2001. According to the most recent economic indicator, the U.S. Consumer Price Index dropped to 3% year-on-year in June, the slowest since March 2021, but still above the central bank's goal range of 2%, implying that more policy action may be required.
美联储制定它的货币政策主要是根据经济数据的观测。目前来看呢，通胀率仍然是处在高位，虽然说它的下行通道已经比较稳固，美联储的紧缩政策，美国的经济会受到比较大的压力，特别是失业率和经济增长，大家还是表示了比较大的担忧。
From December to May, the M2 money supply in the United States dropped for 6 months in a row. Also in the first quarter of this year, the annualized growth rate of the U.S. GDP has decreased to 2%. Furthermore, domestic private investment declined 8.05% year-on-year. Industrial and commercial loans in the country fell for 3 months in a row from March to May. Now the impact of rising interest rates is being seen in all sectors of the U.S. economy.
美国最新的私人投资已经开始出现了一些明显的下降，与此同时呢，商业银行的这种工商业信贷也出现了明显的下降，居民家庭按揭贷款的呢，这种还款的压力随着利率的上升正在逐渐的增加，所以未来可能会对于房地产市场和美国的居民消费逐渐产生了一个向下的一个压力。实际上美国经济正在逐渐的转向经济增速逐渐下降这样一个新的一个趋势。
According to the most recent S&P Global survey, overall business activity in the United States has dropped to the slowest level in nearly 5 months. Reporting, this has been Loren Santos, SMNI News.
Sweden has accused Russia of launching a disinformation campaign surrounding the recent Quran burning protest in the Nordic country. Kirby Trinidad has the news.
Swedish officials are pointing fingers at Russia as the mastermind behind a disinformation campaign concerning the Quran burning crisis. In a recent press briefing concerning the recent influence campaigns against Sweden, Civil Defense Minister Carl Oskar Bolin said that the country is a victim of a disinformation campaign backed by states and state-like actors aimed at harming its interests and its citizens. Meanwhile, head of communication at Sweden's Psychological Defense Agency, Mikael Östlund, said his agency had recorded at least 1 million publications connected to the Nordic country. Östlund has accused Russia of using propaganda channels and the media to promote its agenda, to split Sweden's connection with the West, and to create an increased anxiety and polarization here in the Nordic country. He added that the move portrays an obvious ambition from the Russian side to make it more difficult for Sweden to join NATO. Meanwhile, the Swedish Security Service warned that the burning of the Holy Book as well as the ongoing disinformation campaigns on social media and elsewhere negatively affected Sweden's image. It can be remembered that Finland's Foreign Minister Pekka Haavisto has also accused Russia of being involved in the Quran burning protest by far-right politician Rasmus Paludan in January to derail Sweden's NATO accession. Russian President Vladimir Putin and local lawmakers, on the other hand, condemned the Swedish authorities for allowing a demonstration in Stockholm that involved the desecration of the Holy Book on the major Muslim holiday of Eid al-Adha. Reporting from Sweden, this has been Kirby Trinidad, SMNI News.
International efforts to transfer oil from a decaying tanker to prevent billions of dollars worth of humanitarian catastrophe have started in Yemen. Melchizedekadis reports.
After not being maintained for 8 years, international organizations have warned that a dilapidated tanker stranded off the coast of Yemen is at risk of exploding and triggering one of the largest oil spills recorded in history. Built by a Japanese company in the 1970s, the FSO Safer was sold to the Yemeni government in the 1980s to store up to 3 million barrels of export oil pumped from fields in eastern Yemen. The supertanker has been moored in Yemen's west coast for more than 30 years, but maintenance operations for the vessel had been suspended since 2015 due to the ongoing civil war in the Arab sovereign state. SFO Safer's structural integrity has been compromised and is at risk of breaking apart or exploding after not being maintained for the past 8 years. The cost of cleanup alone is estimated at $20 billion. This stranded vessel carries more than 1.1 million barrels of oil, or 4 times the amount of the oil spilled by the Exxon Valdez supertanker of Alaska in 1989, one of the world's worst ecological disasters. The potential damage is enough to make it the 5th largest oil spill from a tanker in history once it explodes. According to the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, a major spill would destroy marine life, expose millions of people to highly polluted air, devastate fishing communities, force nearby ports to close, and disrupt global commercial shipping through the Suez Canal. The complex operation to salvage the rusting tanker could be completed in less than 3 weeks, according to the United Nations. Reporting, this has been Melchizedekadis, SMNI News, Kuwait.
The people of Marawi expressed gratitude for President Bongbong Marcos' mention of the rehabilitation program in their city, considering it a significant morale booster. Here are the details in MJ Mondihar's report.
During his recent address to the nation, President Bongbong Marcos did not forget to mention Mindanao, particularly those affected by the war in Marawi City. He highlighted the ongoing Marawi Rehabilitation Program, which was initially initiated under the administration of former President Rodrigo Duterte. Now, as the current president, Marcos Jr. assured the continuity of the program for the betterment of Marawi and its residents who suffered from the conflict.
5 taon mula nung matinding kaguluhan, babangon na ang Marawi City. Nanunumbalik na ang sigla sa pamayanan Maraming proyekto ang nakumpleto at mga infrastrukturang naitatayo.
President Marcos Jr. also mentioned that financial aid is currently being processed for the victims of the Marawi siege, enabling them to start anew. He expressed hope for the prevalence of hope and the continuity of unity, vigilance, and the pursuit of peace and progress.
Kasalukuyan na tayo nagpoproseso ng tulong pinansyal para sa mga biktima ng Marawi siege upang sila ay makapagsimula muli. Naway mamayani ang pag-asa, naway magpatuloy ang pagkakaisa, pagmamatyag at paghahangad ng kapayapaan at kaunlaran.
The President's message reached the people of Marawi, including the commitment to continue the programs for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao or BARMM. Representative Z. Alon Tojong, the congressional representative of the 1st District of Lanao do Sur, lauded the President's speech, seeing it as a morale booster for the people of Marawi, assuring them that they're not forgotten by the national government.
It's a moral booster din na yung nagawa ng former president, no, in terms of for the Bangsamoro people. Narinig natin kay presidente ngayon, President Bongbong Marcos, na irespeto niya yung peace process, no.
The BARMM continues its path toward normalization and achieving lasting peace in the region. Adjong also expressed gratitude to former President Duterte for his political will in establishing the BARMM and providing autonomy to the Bangsamoro people.
Ang legacy ng ating former President Duterte, because he was able to finally put an end to the long agreement, no, the discussion in the peace table, kung ano, and he was able to nalagyan niya ng period, no, yung usapin, and finally we've seen the establishment of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Regional Government, putting all the groups, no, ang Moro National Liberation Front and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front into one folds, no.
In 2018, former President Duterte signed the Bangsamoro Organic Law, which aimed to extend the power of our Muslim brothers in Mindanao to govern the region. This led to the creation of the BARMM.
We are proud of the progress that the BARMM has taken. It will be self-governing. It will be progressive and it will be effective. Through the BARMM, we have strengthened the nation's prospects for finally achieving sustainable progress anchored on a true and lasting peace in southern Philippines. We will continue to support the progress of the BARMM, apace with our singular vision for all Filipinos.
For Government of the Philippines, I'm Jim Ondihar, SMNI News.
President Bongbong Marcos Jr. reaped millions worth of investment pledges after meeting with top businessmen in Malaysia. Hannah Jane Sancho tells us more.
President Ferdinand Romualdez Marcos Jr. believes that the pledges reaped from Malaysian firms are proof that they are interested to invest in the Philippines. The president's state visit to Malaysia yielded up to $285 million worth of investment pledges following his meeting with major businessmen together with his economic team.
The investment commitments that we have received thus far are valued at around $235 million, which is a good indication that there is strong interest from Malaysia to invest in the Philippines.
President Marcos underscored how the Philippine economy continues to grow and recover. According to the Philippine Statistics Authority, the Philippines is among the best performing economies in the region with a 7.6% gross domestic product or GDP growth in 2022. This marks the highest GDP growth of the Philippine economy since 1976. President also pointed out that the good cooperation with the government and the private sector has played a significant role in improving the country's economic policy. Meanwhile, Malaysia remains as one of the top resources of foreign direct investment of the Philippines.
Malaysia is still the fourth top source of foreign direct investment to the Philippines. The FDI from Malaysia stands at about $108 million, which continues to indicate a strong interest from Malaysia to the Philippines.
President Marcos also met with representatives of the dairy company Farm Fresh Berhad. The said company will invest $20 million and is looking for 200 to 400 hectares of land for lease to start their business in the Philippines. President Marcos meanwhile welcomed the idea of a large-scale cattle raising in the country for milk production. Farm Fresh plans to raise around 2,000 milking cows in the Philippines, with Batangas and Laguna as possible location, as said by Farm Fresh officials. The company also aims to start their business operations in 2028, where about 200 jobs will be open for Filipinos. Farm Fresh is currently constructing a 6,000 square meter dairy processing facility in San Simon, Pampanga for fresh milk production. The construction cost is estimated $5 million, and the company aims to start its operation this year and will employ around 50 Filipino workers. For God and my beloved Philippines, this has been Hannah Jane Sancho, SM9 News.
Tourists flock to a famous fishing village in Chengdu in Fujian, China for its houses made of oyster shells and women wearing traditional flowery headdresses. Let's hear this story from Jason Rubrico.
A famous fishing village in Chengdu in Fujian, China receives a lot of tourists every day. Xinpu Village is popular for its unique practices and architecture. First, the village is known for its colorfully dressed women with flowery headwear, traditional Chinese garments, and wooden sabots.
Chinese girls is chasing for beauty, and this garden in their hair is a symbol of beauty. So they like the lifestyle, or they like the garden in their hair.
Since Chengdu is one of the important port cities on the maritime Silk Road, the flowers worn by Xinpu women originally came from Arabic countries. In 2008, the said practice of women was recognized as a national intangible cultural heritage in China.
Bukod sa mga nagagandahang headdress na sinusuot ng mga kababaihan dito sa Xinpu Village, kilala rin ang lugar sa mga bahay na gawa sa oyster shells. Ayon sa taga Xinpu, nagsimula ang pagtatayo ng mga oyster houses noong Song at Yuan Dynasty.
It's very rare from the whole country. They are made of the oyster shell, and it's kept warm in the winter and it's kept cold in the summer. So it's very amazing and impressive.
But the oyster shells used to build the houses did not come from Chengdu but from Africa. In ancient times, the Xinpu people traded goods with African countries. They went there with silk and tea and returned with oyster shells to increase the weight of their ship and prevent capsizing. Besides China, most of the tourists here come from Japan, South Korea, and other countries in Southeast Asia. For God and my beloved Philippines, I am Jason Rubrico, SM9 News.
Joko Widodo, the president of Indonesia, arrived in China to attend the ceremony of the World University Games in Chengdu. The details from CGTN Shu Chinchen's reports.
It's been drizzling in Chengdu for the couple of days, but it kind of adding a little bit of romantic scenes to seeing the president landing here in Chengdu. The Indonesian president Joko Widodo landed here at the Chengdu's Tianfu International Airport Thursday afternoon, leading a delegation on an official trip to China. During his trip, President Joko will meet with his Chinese counterpart, President Xi Jinping, as well as to attend the opening ceremony for the World University Games here in the city of Chengdu. And the president was welcomed by performances on the tarmac, as well as greeted by Huang Qiang, Sichuan's provincial governor. This year also marks the 10th anniversary for a comprehensive strategic partnership between China and Indonesia. Joko has voiced support for the Belt and Road Initiative and for the concept of building a community of shared future of China and Indonesia. China is Indonesia's largest trading partner and the largest importer of Indonesian goods. Ties between the two countries are also expected to strengthen further under the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Trade Agreement. Joko is also expected to meet several Chinese business executives. Before his trip to China, the Indonesian president also met with the chief executive of China's Hong Kong Special Administrative Region in Jakarta. The two pledged efforts to reduce trade barriers. Meanwhile, the Jakarta-Bandung high-speed railway is also expected to inaugurate later this year, a key development project showcasing the two countries' partnership. Xu Xinchen, CGTN, Chengdu.
In our sports news, the Philippine Blue Girls concluded their campaign in the Women's Softball World Cup Group C, finishing in 4th place. Meanwhile, the Magnolia Hotshots swept the PBA on tour preseason after defeating the Terra Firma G. Here's the report from Juris Bonifacio.
The Philippine Blue Girls failed to secure the wild card for WBSC Women's Softball World Cup Finals 2024 after a closely fought match against Italy in the playoffs round, which ended with a score of 6-5 in favor of Italy. In the first innings, Blue Girls managed to score, taking a 1-0 lead. However, in the second innings, Italy struck back with 3 runs, gaining a 3-1 lead. The Philippines caught up in the third innings, leveling the score at 3-3, but before the inning ended, the host country scored 2 more runs, taking a 5-3 lead. In the fourth innings, Blue Girls once again tied the score at 5-5, but Italy quickly responded with another run, reclaiming a 1-run lead with a score of 6-5. Before the game, Blue Girls had previously beaten Italy with the same score of 6-5. Also qualifying for the World Cup Finals are the United States and Australia from Group A, Puerto Rico, Netherlands, and China from Group B, and Japan, Canada, and Italy from Group C. In another sports news, Magnolia Chicken Templados Hot Shots achieved a perfect 11-0 record in the PBA on tour preseason. They accomplished this after defeating the Terra Firma DYIP with a score of 106-92. Chicken Templados already held a 24-17 lead in the first quarter. Though Terra Firma managed to catch up and take the lead in the third quarter, the Hotshots made a strong comeback in the final quarter, securing a double-digit lead. James Laput led Magnolia's victory with 16 points and 11 rebounds, followed closely by Joseph Ariobu with 15 points. Mark Baroca and Aristotel Dionisio also contributed double-digit points. For God in my beloved Philippines, I am Joris Bonifacio, SMNI News.
And before we end, may we be inspired with the message of the appointed Son of God. We need God at this very moment, not only in the Philippines, but all over the world. That's all for today's edition of Newsline World. For more news update, you may visit smninewschannel.com or follow us on official social media accounts on Rumble, Facebook, and Twitter. For God in my beloved country, the Philippines, I'm Fatima Nawzil. Thank you for watching Newsline World. And thank you to our beloved pastor, Pastor Polo C. Kibuloy, for the opportunity to be a part of this program. May you continue to listen to SMNI as it delivers nothing but fair, truthful, and balanced news, because SMNI is your source of credible news.